A healthy bunch of individuals who've come to experience story of hope live in our hall here in Wittenberg on the corner of Raymond Road and School Street. And joining me now is Dr. Charles Chouler, and this is the segment of the show where we get to hear individuals and their personal testimony. So Dr. Charles, thank you so much for being willing to come through.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Such an honor and a privilege. Yeah, your microphone's on, so don't worry about it. You can hear you nice and clearly. So, Dr. Charles, how the segment works is we ask individuals like yourself to share what God has done in their lives, to share the reality of life before Jesus Christ, and then also once you've been a Christian for a while like yourself, I know that there are many stories. We have limits of time, but we're very excited to hear your story. So, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. Well, it's hard to know where to begin because I really grew up. I almost felt like I was one of those people who had Christ with me from birth. But, and I was very much an overprotected child. I was one of an identical twin. And I got away with murder because I was this kind of more protected child. Out of 4 children, we were all under the age of 4, growing up in a little flat in England and then coming to South Africa. My father was an eye specialist, but he was either viewed as very eccentric or a man ahead of his time, because in our house there was no antibiotics, no nothing. You just had to get better on your own and have good food, eggs from the chickens in the yard, and even a bit of sand now and again to get your immunity right. If he had to practice today, then he would certainly be the more mainstream. But in those days it was like very odd. Anyway, but growing up as a sort of overprotected child, I could sort of explore many things, and we went to church like everybody in our neighborhood. But a time came where all was not well. And I can't go into all what was not well, apart from the fact that my parents became progressively more unhappy, and as our children left home, it exposed their wounds in their marriage, and they got a divorce, and my dad could no longer practice medicine for various reasons, and it affected me very deeply because I was aspiring to become a doctor. I wasn't your academically most bright person. Maybe you think I am, but I'm not. So my biggest fear was not getting into medical school, feeling unworthy to be a doctor, and constant fear of failure. And it wasn't an unrealistic failure, because you're reminded every single day by your colleagues, by your lecturers, you could fail the year, they won't let you in again. If you fail once, that's it. So not only was I on a waiting list to get into medical school, secondly, I failed my first year every single subject, which not only my family's breakdown, it was me not focusing and me not doing what I should do. I was exploring other things, I was going out at night, I was basically rebellious. And during that year, I heard a man called Carl Cronier coming to the campus of the University of Witwatersrand, and he and a group of singers were basically evangelizing. He said, "Who has the courage to follow Jesus?" And everybody just disappeared from that moment. And I was left alone, and I went up to him, and I said, "I want to." And that was 1970, probably 1 or 2. It was part of the Teen Challenge, the great revival in the Bronx area of New York, which gave birth to Teen Challenge, David Wilkerson. And Carl Cronier was this charismatic leader, and to me and my twin brother and other neighbors who all followed suit and went to this little Pentecostal church in Parkhurst, it was like a wonderful revival. It was like romance, excitement, everything. It was this great revival. But unfortunately, intellectually, I couldn't reconcile that and going to university and being taught evolution and Philip Tobias and the history of man and hearing about Mrs. Ples, and it's like the Naledi people in man started five. I couldn't reconcile science and faith at all. And even now, I struggle to integrate a lot of things. My early years as a doctor were turbulent, to say the least. And I won't go into too much detail other than to say that it took me probably a good 20 years to feel confident that I wasn't going to be struck off the roll or make some fatal mistake or just be an outcast. Because, doctors are very critical people. They're very, they don't suffer fools gladly. And if you're late or anything goes wrong, they will they're not shy to threaten you. So it takes a long time to just be confident enough just to practice. Then you hit by people's storms of life. I was chatting to Jason now. For me, I was always sensitive to depression and anxiety and people's stress. Apart from their medical illnesses of their hypertension and their arthritis and all the other things, just their crushed spirit would get to me. And what happened is I looked more and more into the church and not to the psychologists and psychiatrists, and that we had all that, but it wasn't enough. It just wasn't enough. And together with a nursing sister in 1993, Jackie Hess, we started, she was a nurse at Plessy where I was doing sessional work, and she and I started praying for something to happen between the church and the medical profession. And out of that was born what we called Ministry of Hope. And we just made a mnemonic out of the word hope, healing of people's emotions. And it developed into a little cell group. In fact, I met Dawn Mull and her husband, and reminded me of 10 years where we met every single week at the homes of various people. It eventually became the home of Wendy Ewing, who's quite also well known. And of the 12 or 15 people that we ministered to, sadly, about 4 or 5 still took their lives in very, very horrific ways. And I said to Dawn, one doesn't know whether we maybe inadvertently extended their lives by having a little support group. But when that did come to a sort of gradual end, where we just continued our work on a one-to-one basis, no longer forming group, people couldn't come out at night anymore. There were various things. I think we were all a bit devastated ourselves that people still took their lives despite being in a support group. Such is the nature of depression, where it can, even in a Christian, it can lead you to the point where you feel completely abandoned by God, that you're not a Christian, that you are of no worth to man or beast, that you can actually take your life. It's horrific to even think about it, that there's a place where we can go in our darkness that is almost unreachable. But nevertheless, I have to remember and remind myself of my spiritual compass. What are the words of the Bible that keep me going? And as I was preparing for this, I remember all the time the words of Isaiah 61, that Jesus came to set the captive free. Amen. And he came to release the oppressed and the widow and the orphan. Just those words alone. But then again I read on, not just healing them, but it says, if you read on in Isaiah 61, so that they can build. What can they build? They can rebuild the desolate places for generations, to build up what was lost and broken. So we don't just need to be healed just for feeling good, but we have a task to do. We have got to rebuild in South Africa. We've got a whole country to rebuild. We've had a legacy of apartheid, which has been cruel to the extreme. We've got to rebuild relationships at family level, at level of our forefathers. We've got to redeem the past. Do you agree?
Amen.
Amen. Whether you're a doctor, whether you're a nurse, whether you're a social worker, whether you're a pastor, whether you're a builder, whether you're a gardener, whether you're a plumber, no matter what you are, we rebuild it. The wonderful thing I saw yesterday at house call was a Zimbabwean nursing sister ministering to a friend of ours who's an ex-Zimbabwean Rhodesian lady of leisure who had a farm, animals, and a huge estate, but brought low, because you know what happened in Zimbabwe. Now the roles are completely reversed. Those people you lorded over as in your youth are now serving you as your healthcare worker.
Sure. Yeah.
So we can never be too proud. What you think are like lowly now may well become those who administer your medicine and clean you. So treat people well, because you never know who's going to administer to you when you are old. And as St. Paul said, we may be led where we don't want to go. Dying is not an easy process. We have St. Luke's, we have wonderful palliative care, but the majority of people die in their homes. They die in undignified ways. So much as we want to promote dignity here and there, there's a very different reality out there.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing, Dr. Charles. And one of the things I just couldn't help pick up on is despite those meetings, there were people that took their lives.
That's
so
right.
again, we can do what we can as individuals, but everybody has an individual choice.
Yes, even in depression, and when your judgment is so altered and so deluded, there is a sort of a choice. But I don't believe people are totally in touch with themselves. Because for someone who's been a believer all their lives, and suddenly to say, God doesn't exist, and I don't take them at face value. So, and in the Word it said Jesus looked beyond people. He didn't take them. He saw what they said, but he believed more in them than they could believe in themselves. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He could see their potential, and I think as human beings, not just as doctors, we need to see beyond what people say. Because they say it in anger, or they say it in hurt, and they say it in sorrow. So you can't take that as their truth forever.
So, can I ask you just then to end off with a prayer for us, please?
Yes. I'd like to just pray and use a beautiful verse that when Jesus rose again from the dead, having been completely crushed and abused, he said, the promise and the hope that he gave us, and I'm going to pray. Dear Lord, Heavenly Father, your words were so amazing, and you said that you would be with us to the end of the earth, and you will, those who believe will be able to lay hands on the sick so that they can recover, and that you will accompany us in whatever we do, whether we bind up the brokenhearted and whether we comfort those who mourn. We don't have to have training, and we don't have to have special degrees and diplomas to comfort those. We can comfort with just touch and with love and with kindness. So Lord, we ask forgiveness for where we have just walked away from situations where, in our families, where we've been hurt. Help us to overcome our hurt and disappointment, that we can reach out to those who abused us and reach out to those who criticized us, so that we can do your work of rebuilding the lost, the broken, the desolate, and you can be glorified in that. In Jesus' precious name.
Amen. Amen. Charles. Dr. Charles Chouler, and for those of you tuned in on CCFM 107.5, also broadcasting in the official valley on the 96.7 frequency. We have a live audience in front of us for today's special story of hope. Let me first just thank Dr. Charles for coming through, also known as the radio doctor. For many years, Dr. Charles has been involved here at CCFM and given practical advice and so forth. But just for those who are in a place of depression, those who are struggling with the curved balls that life often throws us, I want to encourage you. Today is a day where you are welcome to contact our prayer department. There are people standing by to take your call and to pray with you. And the number to dial is 021 788 3340. Today is possibly the day